Have you ever found yourself in the midst of chaos, wondering how life became so disordered? Maybe you're sitting there now trying to make sense of a world that seems to have lost all sense itself. You're not alone. We've all been there. We've all asked ourselves at some point, how did it get this way? How did I end up here? That feeling of uncertainty, the disorientation that comes when the ground beneath you no longer feels solid. It's something that each of us faces often when we least expect. Chaos, you see, isn't always about the big earth-shattering events we hear about on the news. Yes, there are wars, natural disasters, pandemics that shake entire nations, but more often, chaos is quieter. It's more personal. It's that moment when everything you thought you had under control slips through your fingers. It's waking up one morning to find that a relationship you relied on has unraveled. It's the loss of a job you thought was secure. It's looking in the mirror and realizing you've lost touch with who you are, unsure of what your next step should be. In those moments, we don't just feel overwhelmed. We feel abandoned by the world, by life, by the very order we thought governed everything. We ask, where's the meaning? Where's the sense in all of this? And that question, whether whispered in despair or shouted in frustration, is one that haunts so many of us when life becomes unpredictable and uncontrollable. It's natural to want answers. We want explanations for why things fall apart, why life doesn't follow the neat script we imagine. And yet there are no simple explanations. Chaos is, by its very nature, irrational, without a clear beginning or end. It's as if the structure of life, the rules we think are holding everything together, suddenly disappear, leaving us in a fog where nothing seems to make sense anymore. But here's the important part. It's not the chaos itself that defeats us, it's our reaction to it. When everything feels disordered, when we lose our grip on what feels stable, it's easy to give in to despair. But let me tell you this, chaos doesn't mean you're lost. It doesn't mean you failed or that there's no way out. It's a part of life's natural rhythm, and that's where faith comes in. Now, I don't mean faith as a magic solution that will fix everything with a snap of the fingers. Faith isn't a shortcut, and it doesn't promise that chaos will vanish. No, faith is something much deeper, much more profound. Faith is the strength that lets you stand firm in the middle of the storm, even when the winds are howling and the ground is shaking. It's the quiet confidence that no matter how disordered life becomes, there's something larger, something unshakable that you can hold on to. When chaos arrives, it can feel like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into a void. But faith doesn't pull you away from that edge. It transforms the way you see it. Instead of fearing that the ground will crumble beneath you, faith allows you to trust that. Even if you fall, you'll be caught. You don't have to see the end of the chaos to believe that you'll come out the other side. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's easy to talk about faith when everything's going well. It's easy to have faith when life is comfortable, when everything's ticking along according to plan. But what about when the chaos is so overwhelming that you can barely breathe? What about when you feel completely lost, unsure of where to turn next? How can you have faith in those moments? The answer, surprisingly, is that faith isn't about pretending everything is okay. It's not about putting on a brave face and ignoring the mess around you. It's about recognizing the mess, acknowledging the chaos, and choosing to trust anyway. It's about saying, yes, things are difficult right now. Yes, I don't know what the future holds. But I believe there's something greater at work here, even if I can't see it yet. Think about the last time you felt completely out of control. Maybe you lost your job or someone you loved walked out of your life. Maybe you faced a health scare that shook you to your core. In that moment, it probably felt like the world was falling apart. But look at where you are now. You survived, you're here. And if you're honest with yourself, you might realize that even in those darkest moments, there was a small voice inside you that whispered, keep. That voice, that quiet nudge to keep moving forward. That's what faith looks like in the real world. It's not loud or flashy. It doesn't always have the answers, but it's persistent. It's the thing that keeps you standing when everything else is pushing you to give. Faith then isn't about eliminating chaos. It's about transforming how we experience it. Chaos will come. Life will inevitably throw you curveballs. But with faith, you're not fighting against the chaos. Instead, you're learning how to stand in the middle of it, unshaken. What is nature of chaos? Is it something we can avoid? Is it something we can outsmart or outroot? Or is it simply woven into the very fabric of existence? Think about it. We spend so much of our lives trying to avoid chaos. We plan, we prepare, we do everything we can to stay in control. And yet, no matter how carefully we arrange our lives, chaos finds a way in. Take a moment and reflect on your own experiences. Maybe you planned your career down to the last detail, only to find the industry you trained for no longer exists in the way you imagined. Or perhaps you've invested in relationships, building them carefully over time, only to watch them crumble due to reasons you never saw coming. It's the same for all of us. No matter how much we plan, chaos is a constant companion. Here's the real question. Is chaos something we can control, or is it simply part of life's fabric? Can we ever truly escape it, or are we destined to live with it, to face it over and over again? The answer, I believe, lies not in trying to control the chaos, but in accepting that it's an inherent part of our existence. Life is not a series of neat, predictable events. It's messy, it's unpredictable. And it's in that unpredictability, in that mess, that we often find our greatest growth. You see, our struggle to avoid chaos often causes more suffering than the chaos itself. We fight against it, resist it, thinking that if we just try hard enough, we can keep it at bay. But what if we stop fighting? What if we accepted that chaos isn't something to be avoided, but something to be lived through? I think of chaos like the waves of the ocean. You can't stop the waves from coming. You can't control their size or their frequency, but you can learn to ride them. You can learn to stay afloat, even when the waves feel overwhelming. And sometimes, in the midst of the storm, you find a strength you didn't know you had. That's the purpose chaos often serves. It pushes us beyond our comfort zones. It forces us to grow, to adapt, to find new ways of being. Chaos, where we stop fearing it, can be the very thing that leads us to deeper faith, greater resilience, and a stronger sense of purpose. What if chaos isn't something to be feared, but something to be embraced? What if, instead of seeing it as a force that destroys, we saw it as a force that transforms? Would it change the way you face the storms in your life? Would it give you the courage to stand firm, even when everything around you is shifting? How can one possibly have faith when life seems to crumble around them? It's a question that we've all asked ourselves at one point or another. When the world feels chaotic, when nothing seems to make sense, when we're surrounded by uncertainty, the idea of having faith can seem almost absurd. How do you believe in something when everything around you is falling apart? How do you trust in the unseen when what you see in front of you feels like pure chaos? There's a common misconception about faith that needs to be addressed here. Many people think of faith as blind optimism, as if it's some kind of wishful thinking or naive hope that everything will magically work out. But that's not what faith is, at least not the kind of faith I'm talking about. Faith is not about pretending that the chaos doesn't exist. It's not about ignoring reality or convincing yourself that life is perfect when it clearly isn't. Faith is something much deeper, something much more profound. It's not about seeing the world through rose-colored glasses, but rather about looking at the world as it truly is, messy, chaotic, unpredictable, and choosing to believe in something great. It's the quiet, steady confidence that, even though you don't have all the answers, there is something bigger than the immediate chaos, something that gives meaning and purpose, even when you can't see it clearly. Imagine, if you will, a person walking through complete darkness. They can't see the path in front of them. They have no idea where they're going. And there's a real fear that they might stumble or fall. But they keep walking step by step, not because they see the way ahead, but because they believe that there is a path. They trust that with each step, they're moving forward, even if they don't know exactly where it will lead. That's what faith looks like. It's not about knowing every detail of the future. It's not about having everything figured out. Faith is about moving forward, even in the dark, guided not by what you see, but by what you believe to be true. And sometimes that means walking with uncertainty, with doubt even. but still walking. Let's talk about doubt for a moment, because it's important to recognize that faith and doubt aren't enemies. A lot of people think that if they have doubts, it somehow means they lack faith. But I would argue that faith and doubt often go hand in hand. Faith doesn't require the absence of doubt. It coexists with it. In fact, I would go so far as to say that faith is often strengthened in the presence of doubt. It's easy to have faith when everything is going well, when life is smooth and predictable. But real faith, the kind of faith that sustains you in chaos, is born in those moments of doubt when you're unsure, when the road ahead is unclear, and yet you choose to believe anyway. Think about some of the people throughout history who faced incredible turmoil, yet held on to their faith. Take someone like Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison for fighting against apartheid. He had every reason to give up, to lose hope, to abandon his faith in the cause he believed in. Yet, even in the darkest of times, he held on. He didn't know how long it would take, or if he would ever see the change he fought for, but his faith in justice, in the possibility of a better world, kept him going. He walked in darkness, guided not by what he could see, but by what he believed to be true. Or think about Anne Frank, hiding with her family during the Holocaust. She wrote in her diary about her belief in the goodness of people, even while living through one of the darkest periods in human history. Her circumstances were unimaginable, yet her faith remained. That faith didn't erase the suffering or the chaos around her, but it gave her strength to endure, to hope, to continue writing her thoughts, even when the world outside was falling apart. Now, I know that not all of us are historical figures. Not all of us are facing wars or imprisonment, but chaos takes many forms, and each of us faces it in our own lives. Maybe your chaos looks like losing a job or dealing with that. Maybe it's the breakdown of a relationship or the uncertainty of not knowing what the future holds. Whatever form it takes, the challenge is the same. How do you keep faith when you can't see the way forward? Here's where the metaphor of the tunnel comes in. Many people think of faith as the light at the end of the tunnel, that faint glimmer of hope in the distance. And yes, sometimes that's what it feels like. But more often, faith is not the light at the end. Faith is the courage to walk through the tunnel itself, even when you can't see the light. It's the belief that step by step you're moving towards something, even if it's not visible to you yet. It's the understanding that the tunnel, no matter how long or dark, is not the end of the story. Let me share a real-life example with you. I once knew a man who, after years of building a successful business, saw it collapse almost overnight. The company he had poured his heart and soul into was gone, and with it, his sense of purpose. He was devastated, not just by the financial loss, but by the identity he had tied to that business. For a long time, he didn't know what to do next. The future seemed bleak, uncertain, chaotic. But in the midst of that uncertainty, he made a choice. He didn't know what the future held, but he chose to believe that his life still had purpose, even if it wasn't clear in that moment. He didn't have all the answers, and he certainly didn't have a perfect plan. But he had faith that something good could still come out of the wreckage, even if he couldn't see it yet. Faith in both of these examples, it doesn't solve the immediate problem. It doesn't make the chaos disappear, but it prevents the person from giving up. It provides an inner strength, a quiet resolve that says, I don't know how this will end, but I will keep going. That's what faith does. It transforms the way we engage with the chaos around us. It gives us a reason to persevere when it would be so much easier to. You see, resilience is not about being stoic. It's not about pretending that things don't hurt or that we're unaffected by the difficulties we face. True resilience is the quiet strength that allows us to keep moving forward, even when we feel uncertain, even when we're afraid. It's the ability to acknowledge the chaos, to feel the weight of it, and still find the strength to take the next step. Chaos often reveals the strength we didn't know we had. When everything is going smoothly, when life is predictable and comfortable, we don't need to dig deep. We don't need to tap into the well of inner strength that lies within each of us. But when chaos hits, when life feels out of control, that's when we discover what we're truly made of. That's when we realize that we're capable of enduring far more than we ever thought possible. Think back to a time in your own life when you faced something difficult, something that at the time seemed insurmountable. Maybe it was a personal loss, a failure, or a period of uncertainty. In that moment, you probably felt like you wouldn't make it, but you did. You're here now on the other side of that experience, and if you are honest with yourself, you might realize that the chaos you went through revealed a strength in you that you didn't know was there. This is the gift of chaos, though it doesn't always feel like a gift at the time. Chaos strips away the superficial. It forces us to confront what truly matters, to rely not on our circumstances, but on something deeper within ourselves. And faith is what allows us to tap into that deeper well of strength. It doesn't remove the chaos, but it helps us find our footing in the midst of it. Let me share another example with you, this time from the life of someone I know. She was a single mother, raising 2 kids while juggling a full-time job and trying to make ends meet. Her life was, by all accounts, there were bills to pay, children to care for, and never enough hours in the day. There were moments when she felt completely overwhelmed, like she was barely holding everything together. But through it all, she had a quiet faith. She didn't know how everything was going to work out. And there were days when she was filled with doubt and fear. But she kept moving forward. She kept trusting that, despite the chaos around her, she had the strength to endure. That faith didn't make the struggles go away. But it gave her the resilience to keep going, to keep showing up for her kids, to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when the road ahead was unclear. But years later, her children are grown, and they often tell her how much they admired her strength during those difficult years. But what they don't realize is that her strength came from her faith. It wasn't a loud, dramatic faith. It was quiet, steady, and persistent. It was the belief that no matter how chaotic things seemed, there was a purpose to her struggles, and that she had the strength to face them. This is the power of faith. It doesn't change the world around us, but it changes the way we engage with the world. It gives us the strength to endure, to keep moving forward, even when the path is uncertain. And in doing so, it reveals a resilience within us that we might not have known existed. So, if you're facing chaos right now, if you're in the midst of a storm and you're wondering why faith matters, remember this: faith won't make the chaos go away, but it will give you the strength to face it. It will give you the courage to keep going, even when you don't have all the answers. And in the process, it will reveal a strength in you that you didn't know you had. Faith doesn't promise an easy life. It doesn't promise that the path will always be smooth. But it does promise that you are not alone in the chaos, and that there is a deeper strength within you than you might realize. And that strength, once discovered, will carry you through even the darkest of times. So, why does faith matter? Because it transforms us. It changes the way we see the world, the way we engage with the chaos around us, and in the end, it gives us the strength to keep moving forward, one step at a time, even when the path is uncertain. How often have you thought to yourself, if only I could control this one thing, everything would fall into place? Perhaps you've planned your life meticulously, charting out each step of your education, your career, your relationships, even the way you imagined your future should unfold. And yet, despite your best efforts, life has a way of throwing curveballs, unexpected twists that you never saw coming, disruptions that seem to mock all your careful plans. The truth is, we all long for control. We want to believe that if we can just hold on tightly enough, we can prevent things from going wrong. But deep down, we know that much of life is unpredictable, that our attempts to control every detail are often nothing more than illusions. Think about it. How many times have you tried to plan for the future, only to find that life had other ideas? Maybe you worked hard to get into a particular college, but the acceptance letter never came. Or perhaps you imagined your career progressing in a certain direction, only to find yourself pivoting into something entirely different when circumstances changed. You might even have envisioned a relationship lasting forever, only to face an unexpected end. We tend to believe that if we can just manage everything around us, our plans, our environment, even the people in our lives, then we can guarantee a specific outcome. But the reality is, no matter how much we try to control, Life remains full of uncertainty, and this uncertainty, this unpredictability, can be incredibly frustrating. It can feel like life is playing a cruel game, pulling the rug out from under us just when we thought we had everything figured out. But here's where the illusion of control becomes dangerous. The more we cling to the belief that we can control everything, the more disappointed and disillusioned we become when life doesn't go according. The tighter we hold on, the harder it becomes to let go when things inevitably take a turn we didn't expect. We end up feeling like we failed, like we weren't strong enough or smart enough to keep things from unraveling. And in that moment, we lose sight of a much deeper truth. Life was never meant to be controlled. Life, by its very nature, is unpredictable. Now, this might sound discouraging at first, but there's a freedom that comes with letting go of the need for control. When we accept that we cannot plan for every eventuality, that we cannot foresee every twist and turn, we free ourselves from the impossible burden that we allow ourselves to stop living in a constant state of anxiety, always waiting for the next thing to go wrong. Instead, we begin to embrace life as it is. Messy, unpredictable, and yes, sometimes chaotic, but also full of possibility, full of moments we could never have planned for, but that turn out to be exactly what we needed. Faith plays a crucial role in this process of letting go. You see, faith isn't about sitting back and doing nothing, hoping that everything will work itself out. Faith is about trusting that even when things don't go according to plan, there is still purpose, there's still meaning. Faith gives us the strength to release our grip, to stop trying to control every aspect of our lives without losing hope. It teaches us that even when the future is uncertain, even when we can't see the whole picture, there's a deeper story being written, one that we are a part of even if we don't understand it in the moment. Let me share a simple example with you. Imagine a young couple, newly married, who have their entire lives mapped out. They have a vision of how their careers will unfold, how they'll save for a house, how they'll start a family in a few years. Everything seems to be falling into place. But then one of them loses their job and suddenly the future they planned for looks very different. In that moment, they could feel devastated, as though everything they worked for was slipping through their fingers. They could frantically try to regain control, to force life back into the plan they originally laid out. Or they could take a step back and recognize that perhaps this unexpected change, while unsettling, is not the end of the world. They could choose to trust that. Even though they can't see how it will all work out right now, they have the strength to move forward together into an uncertain. It's in moments like these, when life takes an unexpected turn, that faith becomes essential. Faith doesn't remove the uncertainty, but it allows us to face it without fear. It gives us the courage to let go of the need for control and to trust that even in the unpredictability, there is purpose. This doesn't mean we stop making plans, or that we sit back passively waiting for life to happen to us. It means that we move forward making the best choices we can, but with an open hand, ready to accept that life may not always unfold the way we expect. Now, you might be asking, how do we practice this kind of faith in our daily lives, when chaos always seems to be lurking just around the corner? It's easy to talk about having faith in theory, but how do we actually live it out when the reality of uncertainty is staring us in the face every day? The key is to understand that faith is not a grand, singular event. It's not about waiting for some huge moment of revelation where everything suddenly makes sense. Faith is something we practice daily in the small, ordinary moments of just like muscle grows stronger with regular exercise. Our faith grows stronger with each small act of trust, each small step forward in the face of uncertainty. Consider a person waking up every morning uncertain about their future. Perhaps they're out of work or struggling to find direction in life. Every day feels like a question mark, filled with doubt and anxiety. And yet each morning they choose to get up. They choose to move forward even though they don't know what the future holds. They choose to believe that there is a purpose to their life, even if they can't see it yet. That's what daily faith looks like. Not a grand leap, but a steady, determined walk, one step at a time. In those small daily decisions, to be kind when it would be easier to be harsh, to forgive when holding a grudge feels justified, to keep going when giving up seems like the easier option. We are practicing faith. We are building resilience, not by trying to control every outcome, but by trusting that there is meaning in the process, in the journey itself. Then here's the beautiful thing. Each day, even the most ordinary, offers an opportunity to strengthen our faith. It doesn't require grand gestures or monumental moments. It's in the simple, daily choices we make, the choice to be patient, the choice to trust, the choice to keep going despite the uncertainty, that our faith grows. And as our faith grows, so does our ability to face the chaos of life with a quiet, steady strength. So, if you're wondering how to practice faith when chaos seems inevitable, remember this. Faith is not something you wait for. It's something you practice every day. It's the small daily acts of trust that build the foundation for resilience. And over time, those small acts of faith will carry you through even the most chaotic of times, giving you the strength to move forward, no matter what life throws your way. Have you ever asked yourself, can I really face all of this alone? Is faith something I have to carry by myself? It's a natural question, especially when life feels chaotic. When you feel like you're being pulled in every direction and it seems like no one else could possibly understand what you're going through. But here's the truth. We were never meant to face chaos alone. No one is strong enough to carry the weight of the world by themselves, and we were never meant to try. Humans are, at our very core, social beings. From the moment we're born, we rely on others. As children, we look to our parents, our teachers, our friends to guide us, to help us navigate the world around us. And even as adults, we never outgrow that need for connection. In fact, in the hardest moments, when life is at its most chaotic, that need becomes even more vital. It's in those moments that the support of others, the sense of being part of a community, can become a beacon of hope, a light in the darkness. Think about a time in your life when you were going through something difficult. Maybe you were dealing with a personal loss, struggling with work, or simply overwhelmed by life's demands. Now think about the people who surrounded you during that time. Maybe it was a friend who listened without judgment, or a family member who reached out just when you needed them most. Maybe it was a coworker who noticed you were struggling and offered to help, or even a stranger who showed you kindness in a way that restored your faith in humanity. In those moments, did their presence make the chaos disappear? Of course not. Life's challenges don't magically vanish just because someone is standing beside us. But their presence did something powerful. It gave you strength. It reminded you that you're not alone. It helped you carry the weight, even if just for a little while, and allowed you to keep moving forward. That is the power of community. It doesn't solve every problem, but it gives us the support we need to face them. Let me share with you the story of a woman I once knew. She had recently lost her job, and it felt like everything she had worked for was crumbling. On top of that, her marriage was going through a rough patch, and she felt utterly alone. In her mind, no one could understand what she was dealing with. Her world felt like it was falling apart. But one day, after church, a group of her friends decided to reach out to her. They gathered together, not to offer solutions or advice, but just they listened, they prayed, they sat with her in silence when words weren't enough. And over time, she realized that their presence, their quiet strength, was what she needed most. They couldn't fix her problems, but they helped her carry the load. They reminded her that she wasn't alone in the chaos. That's what community does. Whether it's a group of close friends, a faith community, or even co-workers who band together during tough times, it provides a kind of strength that we can't muster on our own. It's in the soil of shared struggle that faith often grows. When we share our burdens, when we allow ourselves to lean on others, we find that our faith is no longer something we carry alone. It becomes something we experience together. This idea of faith as a communal experience isn't limited to religious communities, though those can be a source of deep support for many. It can also be found in secular settings. And think about support groups for people going through similar struggles, or even an online community where people come together to share their experiences and lift each other up. It's in these spaces where people open their hearts to one another, faith in humanity, faith in goodness, and faith in the belief that no matter how chaotic life becomes, there are people who will walk through it with us. Why is it so hard to reach out when we're going through chaos? Why do we so often feel like we have to go it alone? Part of the answer lies in pride. We don't want to appear weak, as though needing others is somehow a sign that we can't handle life on our own. But the truth is, it's not weakness to ask for help. In fact, it takes tremendous strength and courage to admit that we can't do it all by ourselves. There is a kind of humility in saying, I can't carry this alone. And there is a profound wisdom in recognizing that it's okay to need others. If you're sitting here today feeling like you're shouldering a burden that's too heavy for you, let me encourage. Reach out. Don't buy into the lie that faith is something you have to bear alone. Don't believe that you have to be strong all the time. Even the strongest among us need others. That's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of being human. The beauty of community is that it reminds us that faith is not a solitary act. When we reach out to others, when we share our struggles and allow others to help carry the load, something remarkable happens. Our faith grows, not just in ourselves but in each other. We begin to see that we are part of something larger than ourselves, that our struggles are not isolated, but connected to the struggles of others. And in that connection, we find hope. So when chaos comes, and it will, because that's part of life, remember this, you don't have to face it alone. There are people in your life, maybe right in this room, who are ready and willing to walk through it with you. Whether it's your family, your friends, your faith community, or even a group of strangers who understand your pain, reach out to them. Let them be a part of your faith and allow your faith to be strengthened by theirs. In the end, the question isn't whether we can face chaos alone. The real question is, why would we want to? Faith, when shared, becomes more than just something we cling to in times of trouble. It becomes a bond that unites us, a source of strength that is multiplied through community, and a reminder that no matter how chaotic life gets, we are never truly alone. So, after everything we've talked about, what do we gain from having faith in chaos? It's a question we keep circling back to, and rightly so. If faith doesn't give us a clear map or make life easier, if it doesn't remove the storms we face, then what's the point? Why does it matter? The answer is simple yet profound. Faith gives us something deeper than certainty or security. It gives us purpose, strength, and connection. It doesn't stop the waves of life from crashing down, but it teaches us how to stand firm when they do. Faith is not about living a life free from chaos, because, as we know, chaos is a part of life, inevitable and unpredictable. But faith is the force that keeps us from being swallowed by it. Faith is what allows us to see meaning, even when we don't have all the answers. It's what reminds us that there's something bigger than the confusion, something stronger than the fear, and something more enduring than the pain. It's not wishful thinking. It's not optimism for its own sake. It's the quiet confidence that no matter how lost or uncertain we may feel, there's a purpose to our steps, even if we can't see it in the moment. Take a moment to think about those times in your life when everything seemed to be falling apart. Maybe it was a job loss, a relationship ending, a dream that didn't pan out. In those moments, it felt like the ground was crumbling beneath you, didn't it? Yet here you are. You made it through. How? Maybe it was faith in yourself. Maybe it was faith in a higher power, or faith in the people around you. But whatever it was, that faith didn't make the chaos disappear. It gave you the strength to survive it. And this is where the true value of faith lies. Not in removing chaos, but in transforming how we experience it. Instead of being crushed by the weight of uncertainty, faith lifts us, sustains us, and connects us to others who are walking through the same storms. It gives us the courage to take the next step, even when the path ahead isn't clear. When everything else seems to fall apart, faith is what keeps us standing. It doesn't mean we won't feel the pain. It doesn't mean we won't struggle, but it means we won't face those things alone. Faith brings us together. It creates bonds of understanding and compassion, and it helps us endure. Whether through community, through inner strength, or through trust in something greater. Faith is what makes the chaos bearable. So when you find yourself in the midst of chaos, remember this: you don't have to have all the answers, and you don't have to control everything. Faith isn't about certainty. It's about standing firm when nothing else makes sense. You are trusting that even when you can't see the way forward, you're not walking it alone. And with that faith, you will find the strength to endure, to persevere, and to rise again.